Hi everyone, good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you. Diane exhaled heavily and waved her handkerchief. The maternity ward was eerie and specific smelling. She didn't like lying in the hospital for 2 weeks after a C-section. It was unbearable. Just a few minutes ago, she was holding one of her babies, John. He was very tiny and wrinkly. She had never seen a newborn before and always wondered how small and defenseless people could be. The mere thought of responsibility made the young mother dizzy. You are a heroic mother. This is the first time you have given birth to 3 people at once. Her roommates marveled. Many of them had been in the maternity hospital more than once, but they had never seen a woman who had borne and given birth to 3 people at once. I can't believe it myself, Diana sighed at a loss. Even though she didn't find out about her triplets at the first ultrasound, she still couldn't fathom being the mother of 3 babies. It's going to be hard for you. Honey, you look so young. He should carry you in his arms for such treasures. She didn't answer such questions and reluctantly. She did not like strangers prying into her private life with their questions. She herself never took an interest in other people's affairs, and she had her reasons for not telling others about herself. The maternity hospital staff already thought she was hysterical. They even called in a psychiatrist. There's nothing wrong with her after the birth depression, the doctor concluded after examining her and talking to her. She had been under a lot of stress, as all mothers are. I'll recover soon, Diana thought. She didn't want to draw too much attention to herself, dreaming of being discharged soon and going home with her children, where they would all be safe. She gave birth to John, Tony, and Maria. They were all weak and looked like each other. She didn't look at them and didn't know what to do with that happiness. After getting a spare moment, Diana struggled out of bed and caught the midwife in the hallway. Young lady, understand, I have to go to the store right away. I'm already all flanked from lying down. I can't take it anymore. Let me walk for a few minutes, I beg you. She looked pitifully at the maternity worker. You need to lie down and rest, not go shopping. What do you need so urgently? You said your husband would be waiting for you at discharge. We're already getting your children ready. And you're going to sneak out, are you? Midwife muttered grudgingly. No, you misunderstood. I'm not going to abandon my children. Do you think I'm crazy? Diane whispered indignantly so as not to cause a commotion. Why isn't your husband or in-laws coming to meet you? Let them buy everything you need. I don't understand you, Mother. You should just lie there in peace. Why fuss in vain as if without you do not do things? My husband can't get away at work. Please understand. I only have 15 minutes, Diana replied, letting the moralizing pass her lips. Maddie gave Diane a disgruntled look, but nodded nonetheless. You have 15 minutes. If you don't show up, I'll call the police. Diane, happy as she could be, quickly headed for the exit to the street. She didn't hear the stern woman muttering to herself about frivolous mothers who are ready to run away as soon as they feel trouble and hardship. But Diana didn't care what anyone thought of her. She had her own thoughts and concerns. She was concerned first and foremost about the welfare of her children and then about her image. After all, she would leave the maternity hospital today, and soon no one would remember them. As soon as Diana was in the sunlight, she began to look carefully around the street outside the gates of the medical facility. She walked around the building where no passers-by usually walked. Various light drinkers gathered in such places ready to fulfill any request for money. Soon, to her delight, she spotted a middle-aged man in clothes. He didn't look very pleasant, but she had no choice in her situation. Sighing, Diana took a determined step toward him. Hello caught the stranger's attention. Be a friend, help me, I'll pay, she said. What do you want? He looked down over with an untrusting gaze. Pretend to be my husband and come to the maternity hospital to pick me and the kids up. The whole event will take 10 minutes, and you'll get $1,000 for it. You don't need anything else. Just pretend, and then we'll go our separate ways as if we'd never seen each other before. Just make yourself presentable. The smell from the stranger was horrible. Why? Are you up to something illegal? I don't want any more trouble with the police. Find yourself another fool. And anyway, where's your husband, out and about? He asked. What are you talking about? Immediately offended Diana and took 2 steps back as if she had been hit. Watch your language, she said. Look at FIFA, the man immediately commanded, spreading his arms wide. What really stings the eyes? Then I was right. You're no ordinary woman. You ought to be kicked out of here. You must have foolishly had children, and now you want to pin it on someone else. I don't want that kind of adventure, replied the man. Diana felt no anger, no shame at the same time. Who is this brother to shame and moralize? He doesn't know anything at all. Look at himself and take the time to judge others, Diana exclaimed, and he was at once silent in surprise. I offered you money, and you don't have anything to buy a bottle with. So sit here sober, Diana said. She knew that she would get no use out of this sass. She herself would be disgusted to involve him in her scheme. There was not much time left. Fear spurred her on to act faster. She let the insulted man's curses pass her by and headed for the other. Though a black eye adorned Archie's face, he looked peaceful and sober. The young man was squatting in front of a brown puppy. Mongrel. What fun yapping from a human hand. Diane realized that this was the best candidate for her. Archie didn't immediately notice the lady walking in his direction and stood up. Are you looking for someone? He asked, looking around for a stranger in a simple cotton dress. I think I've already found you. I have a request. I need you to play my husband in the maternity ward. It's nothing serious. It's for the money. Just need to get out of there with the children in the company of a man. Say a few words, admire the babies, that's all. I beg of you, Diane said. After the first attempt, her confidence waned, but she couldn't go back alone. I'm not embarrassed by your requests, Archie replied with a slight smile. You look neat, even though you're not dressed in the latest fashions. You don't smell of alcohol, and you do not neglect politeness. And I don't want your money. If you didn't need help, you wouldn't ask strangers for it. You can count on me. I'm at your service, Archie said. A smile involuntarily spread across Tony's face. Diana couldn't believe she'd managed to coax a stranger so easily. I apologize for my appearance, Archie said, referring to the bruise. I'm not a troublemaker, but I got into a fight yesterday. Saw a rascal trying to drown this little guy in a sack. He pointed to the frisky pup at his foot. So I stood up for the beast, young man, and his owner came at me. I had to fight him off. No big deal, Archie said. Diana waved her hand. You're much nicer than those without the bruise. She smiled. Told Archie what time to get to the house, headed back. Her time on the outside had already expired when Archie arrived at the appointed hour. The midwives couldn't hold back the sneering sacks. What they were. It's not by appearance that people are judged. Cut off Diana, she handed the children into the man's arms. It's what they do. He was so tiny. He exhaled as he looked at the little face of the sleeping baby. She wished she had a spouse who was as excited about the addition to the family, and that was it. Our deal is done, said Diana to Archie. Thank you for your help. You have helped me a lot. Let me at least help you to get home. Where are you going alone with such a troop of children? Don't worry, I have no ulterior motive. I just don't know how you'd go with them. Well, I could really use some help. I'll call a cab. Archie took an old smartphone out of his pocket. I turned in some non-ferrous metal the other day. There's a bit of money piling up. I'm embarrassed that you're paying for me because I offered to pay you. I'll pay anyway, Diana said. You don't have to, the man replied. I can do it for you. Just take it. I'm thinking about the kids. They hardly spoke in the cab. The driver marveled at how lucky a young family was in the country. Diana only smiled politely and accepted congratulations. She was uncomfortable being related to a stranger. Even though Archie seemed decent to her, her head was now occupied with entirely different things. Diana took Archie to an old house on the outskirts of town with small rooms. "It's cozy," he said, looking around. "It's nothing fancy." Diana waved her hand. "It needs renovation, and she doesn't have much money to spare." It took some time to put all the little ones to bed. There were 3 cradles in Diana's room. It was cramped but cozy. It was clear that Diane was a good hostess. Evan, her father, rested in the other room. "Daddy has cancer." "One thing they checked, and then they found something else," she said. "There's a lot of money spent on medication. I keep hoping he'll make it, but I can't get him the full treatment. My mom has been gone for a long time. It's been 8 years, so I'm the only one to take care of him. And now I have 3 more of them lying around. I don't know how I'm going to cope with everything." Archie just listened. He didn't think it was proper to ask questions about the children's father. It was none of his business, and he didn't want to embarrass such a hospitable woman. The conversation was uneasy and awkward. Archie didn't understand. Diana couldn't do it alone. She had so much to worry about. And she couldn't even go to work because she had babies. "Look, don't freak out and don't think I'm stupid, but I want to help sincerely. I'm not kidding. I feel sorry for you as a human being. You can't do it yourself. You don't have any other family. Neither do I. I may seem dysfunctional, but I'm not lazy." Diana was confused by the suggestion. She wondered what kind of a normal person would ask to be an assistant to someone like her. Yes, it was ridiculous. I don't know what to say. You can get my hopes up and then disappear when things get really difficult. I can't get away from my kids and my dad. I have to take care of them. What's that to you? Can you live free? Diana wondered. What good is this life? I'm lonely. And you have such a family. Don't get any ideas. I'm not looking for benefits. And I don't need your child support. If you tell me, I'll leave. But I'm not dangerous. I wouldn't mind helping you feel like you're part of a family. After all, I don't have one of my own. I'm clean. I don't have any diseases. I'd had an X-ray recently. I was going to get a job. The other day I wanted to go to the movers, but the day before I stood up for a puppy and got hit in the face. Where would they hire me with a face like that? They'll think I'm a troublemaker. So I figured I'd wait it out until it healed. Well, if that's the way you want it, Diana hesitantly began, I don't mind your help. And really, it would be more fun. There is a lot in the apartment and requires male intervention. Daddy hasn't been able to fix anything for a long time. Are you even familiar with tools? You're insulting, Archie said with a smile. I know the address. Let's exchange numbers. I'll come by tomorrow. You need time to get settled today, don't you? Week after week. Diana was getting used to having Archie around. At first, she feared he was a thief or a crook and only pretending to be kind, but she soon realized he was sincere and reliable. Diana didn't tense up anymore. When he wasn't fiddling with children, thanks to his efforts, everything in the house was working properly. Again, our helper was visiting. Evan said, You are a man, smiling. He was glad that his daughter had found a friend and companion, ready at any moment to respond to her call. It is good to see you, Archie. It's good to see you too, Archie answered politely. How are you feeling today? Diane and the kids and I are going to the clinic for a routine checkup. And then I'll take you out for a walk. It's such lovely weather out there. And you're walled up in your room with curtains, needing vitamins and a little warming of the sides. You're such a rascal, Evan coughed, laughing. You'll come and see. Maybe I'd like to go for a little walk. Diana gratefully accepted Archie's care. She always tried to keep the house in order and, despite the whims of her trio, cooked something tasty. She could not support Archie financially, but she would feed him, please. She never ceased to wonder how a stranger could care so much for strangers. No longer could Diana suspect him of anything. Archie had earned her complete trust. She didn't know how long he would stay in her life. But Archie wasn't just her indispensable assistant and handyman. He became a friend, someone she enjoyed being around. Thank you. She touched Archie's shoulder as he sat down at the kitchen table. Dad was always arguing with me. He didn't like to seem weak and infirm in front of his daughter, always waiting for you to come over. He's much livelier now. It's not hard for me. Really, Archie answered. I'm an orphan, so it's a great pleasure for me to be part of someone's family, to make decisions, to take responsibility, to be useful. And you're getting a good job, too. Diana winked at him. If it gets hard and you get tired, you just tell me, and I'll take some of the work off your hands. Don't think I'm just comfortable having you around. I care about you, Diana assured Archie. One day he came home from work puzzled. Look, there's a car outside. You're not expecting anyone. I've noticed it for days, but I haven't said anything. You sure about that? Diane rushed to the window with a startled expression and was convinced of her friend's words. She jerked back from behind the curtains. What is it? You look pale. Is there something wrong? Archie took her by the shoulders and noticed a confused look. Diana, tell me, are they watching you? She sank back in her chair and clutched her head. What am I supposed to do? How long have they been there and what might they know? Who are they? Can you speak clearly? I have to know if you are in danger. You can't sit idly by. Archie insisted. Diana was silent for a few seconds, gathering her thoughts, and then stood up resolutely. Come into the kitchen. I'll tell you everything there. I don't want Papa to hear. She didn't want him to get excited. Diana was having a hard time remembering the time in her life when she had just broken up with Jacob, her fiancé. It wasn't that I was madly in love with him. On the contrary, he'd shown himself to be an irresponsible bum. He was the kind of man I didn't want to be involved with. I was bitter that he wouldn't listen to what I asked of him and that he wasn't going to change for the sake of our future. Yes, it was hard for me to part with him. But there was no hope, Diane said. She no longer remembered Jacob. Other things were more important to her now. Daddy complained of severe pain in his lower back. No ointment for the pain helped him. The pain was getting worse and worse, and the doctors just kept throwing up their hands. And when they told us that Dad had cancer, it was like my world turned upside down, and we were silent for a moment. The memory of that terrible day was reverberating in my heart with pain and fear. But Daddy could be helped, but I didn't have any money, and I didn't have anyone to support me, at least morally. I understand that it was very difficult for you. That kind of news would knock anyone out. Archie nodded and took her hand. I didn't know where I could get the money. My salary as a clerk in a gift store wouldn't be enough to pay for all the treatments and medications. I was confused, constantly crying out of helplessness. Sometimes I even wanted to give it all up. I realized that my efforts were not enough. And that's when I met the Stones. I was just walking down the street when a well-dressed woman came running up to me. Alice was 37, and her husband, Alexander, was 41. Young lady, please wait. Alice grabbed Diane's arm, but her voice was not demanding, more like desperate. Honey, let her go. You can't do that, her husband reassured her. But she looks so much like me. She's perfect for it. Fit for what? Diana was perplexed, not from meeting strange people. Please don't be frightened, Alice spoke in an almost whisper. Come with us to the cafe. We will discuss everything. We will discuss everything. We mean you no harm, just a conversation. Please, Alexander picked up on that. The couple had extensive business both in and out of town. They knew no shortage of funds, amenities, and entertainment, but they could not afford only one luxury, a child. Diane, please. We really need you, Alice pleaded tearfully. She folded her palms together and her large stone earrings became a symbol of her words. We've been looking for the right surrogate mother for our baby for a long time. And you and I are very similar. We want to keep our traits in the baby. We will pay any money, whatever you ask. It's all legal. A certified contract on our part, uncompensated care and care for the duration of the pregnancy. Diane had never considered herself in that capacity. She was confused, but her desire to get her father out of the world didn't allow her to refuse. "It's like God sent you to me," she responded, also in tears. "We really need each other. I agree. But I haven't given birth before." "I'm very scared," Diana admitted. "It's okay, honey." Her spouse smiled warmly at her. "We will take care of you as if you were our own child. You won't need anything, and you'll get a decent advance right away. As soon as we agree with your father, we'll make a contract." Since Diane agreed to the deal, she quit her job under the terms of the contract. She has not exerted herself physically in any way, has not consumed alcohol, has switched to a proper diet, and has worn comfortable clothes. She underwent all the necessary medical examinations, took vitamins and procedures. Alice and Alexander were happy with her condition and prepared to move on to the main thing. Afterward, 3 embryos were implanted for backup and all engrafted. "This is incredible, Alice," Diane exclaimed. "Oh, but in the ultrasound room at the first exam, we'll have triplets." Diane turned to her husband, who stood behind her and put his arm around her shoulders. "It's amazing, but so far, all 3 are viable and without abnormalities," the doctor commented, seeing the consternation in Diana's eyes. Alexander assured her, "Don't worry, Diana, we will take care of you. You won't even feel any discomfort." I promise you. When she received the first large sum in her hands from Alexander and Alice, she cried with relief. She was able to provide Evan with all the medical procedures he needed. If your father needs anything, talk to her. Alice will tell you where to get medical care. Don't worry, we're always in touch. You are like an angel who appeared to us, and we will always be grateful to you. All Diane's fears and doubts evaporated next to the attentive Alice and Alexander. She felt safe. She was not afraid to share her worries. It was as if they had all become one family, preparing to be parents together and sharing all expectations and worries. "Daughter, I'm sorry you went to this trouble because of me," cried the father. "How will you part with your children? They are of your blood and flesh, after all." "It's all right, Papa. I'll be allowed to see them," Diana responded. "They're good people. Can you believe me?" "And that's right," Evan agreed. "They take care of you and me in a way that makes them worthy of having children. They can give them a good life." One day, Diane was startled by a phone call. "You have to get rid of these kids? You hear me? Get rid of them immediately. Those little buggers inside you mustn't take root." "Who's that?" asked Diana in horror. She was creeped out by the creeping voice on the receiver. That he was saying scary things, and all in good faith. "Otherwise, I'm coming for you." God. Diane threw the phone away and couldn't take her eyes off it. Till dawn. Similar calls from an unknown number continued. Diana didn't bother Alice and Alexander and upset them unnecessarily. She liked them very much, and they didn't need any unnecessary worry. They had just regained hope and were glowing in part. What if this was someone's wicked prank? Though, could not trouble them for trifles until she figured it out herself. At first she thought it was Jacob's shenanigans. They bumped into each other once in town, but passed each other by. Jacob gave her a surprised look at her figure, guessing the ex-fiancée is pregnant. That might have offended him, since they had been in a relationship for several years. She refused to continue them, and then it wasn't even 6 months before she got pregnant. Someone else might have been offended by such a thing, and useless Jacob had a high opinion of himself, so he could definitely hold a grudge. "Ever since I found out about Daddy's illness," Diana told Archie, "all my girlfriends scattered. All they wanted to do was go out and have fun. And all of a sudden, I had such serious adult problems on me. They didn't want to be supportive, to even listen to me. Who cares about other people's suffering? Besides, I no longer supported their way of life. Then no one could give me advice, could civilly assess the situation, and insist that I tell everything about Alice and Alexander. Apparently you had to do that, that's for sure, Archie sighed. Threats like that are no joke. Someone was deliberately trying to throw you off balance and make you commit such a sin. There were 3 inside of you. Doesn't this man have any brains at all to insist on such a thing? Why would he want to do that? Who is he? You never found out? Threatening phone calls became a frequent occurrence. Sometimes Diana ignored them, and sometimes she snapped, picked up the phone, and cursed the abuser for his cruelty. He only laughed and made her more emotional. Diana began to fear that her condition would affect the health of the babies. Diana, what is wrong with you? You look pale and... What's troubling you? Asked Alice excitedly as she met her, examining her. Nothing serious, just various little troubles, getting in the way of life together. She waved it off. Oh, poor thing. Diana sympathized sincerely with Alice, unaware of the true cause of her anxiety. If you need anything, just say the word. Alexander and I are ready for anything. If it's uncomfortable to sleep, we'll buy new mattresses and a pillow. Would you like me to order right now? Diane was infinitely grateful for the attention of her spouses who were expecting children. They didn't treat her like an incubator or neglect her company. In everything Alexander and Alice did, she felt sincerity, love, and an interest in her comfort. In their home, she always felt welcome. Soon Diana stopped feeling safe. She could hear footsteps everywhere and the same voice from the tube repeating all sorts of nasty things. She became suspicious, often looking around but realizing that her paranoia was not a play on her imagination. Someone had drawn her into a dangerous game. Then something happened that completely knocked the ground out from under both Alice and Alexander. They stopped answering her calls. It's like they drowned in water, she told her father. I called them, wrote them, left them a voicemail, but they are silent. Then nervously pacing around the room. She was already 6 months pregnant. My stomach was getting pretty bulky and heavy. Moving around was becoming increasingly difficult. There was nothing Evan could do to help. The treatments relieved his condition. He hurried again, but that was it. How is it, my daughter? Did they decide to cheat you? Where could they have gone? It's not just a matter of missing a meeting. It's their own kids. What am I going to do, Daddy? Suddenly Diana cried like a little girl. She had always been resilient, and even as a teenager rarely fell into tears. To see her so frightened, so depressed was unbearable for Evan. Cry, cry, my darling. Her father stroked Diana on the back, letting out all the emotion. There's nothing to keep that crap inside. Who knows why they are silent? Maybe something happened, because anything can happen, but I'm sure they'll turn up. They seemed like decent people to me. They certainly wanted these babies. If they disappeared for a while, there must be a reason for that. But another month passed, and Alice and Alexander did not respond. Diana went to their house, rang the gate several times, knocked and shouted. But there was not even a trace of tires on the car in front of the gate. Apparently, the owners had left their home long ago. Diana did not suspect that they had fled. After all, they're businessmen, Archie remarked, interrupting the story. Maybe they had problems with their competitors, so they went into hiding, lay low, so to speak. You know, I've thought about it too, but it's none of my business. I became a mother of 3 children with absolutely no plans and no means to raise them. I need to think about my dad to provide for his treatment. I can't, Diana suddenly became angry. And I also understand that you're angry and don't know what to do next. Sat down closer and hugged her. I thought about having an abortion, but it was too late. When I realized they weren't coming back and I was left alone with the idea that I wasn't ready to be a mother, I got so despondent. You can't imagine that. And I don't want to remember. I couldn't ruin 3 lives. I'm not that kind of person. What kind of sin would that be? I couldn't stand it, said Diana. I was rolling on his shoulders. At the maternity hospital, I specifically looked for someone to play the role of the father. If a malcontent continued to follow me, he could find out when I gave birth and somehow harm the children. And if there was a married woman among the women giving birth, would that throw him off the scent? I don't know who could have wanted all this, but that car is definitely not just standing outside. You're very brave and strong. Not everyone could stand as much as you have, Archie consoled her. He rocked her in his arms briefly, and she fell asleep. That night, he decided to stay until morning to prevent any accidents from happening. Thank you for being with us, she said the next morning. I felt much safer with you. Dad wouldn't have helped me. He can't even walk unaided. You're welcome. I'm worried about you, and I don't want you or Evan or the kids to get hurt, Archie said as he took baby Maria out of her arms. She immediately smiled at her familiar uncle, showing her little tongue. Archie answered her. Everything seems to be here. But I didn't forget to voice my main point. I can move in with you for now, so I can always be near you. And the dog's grown up too, he mentioned his beloved dog. He's not a puppy anymore. A grown-up guard dog who will be the first to notice in the night if someone wants to get into the house. It's not hard for you. It could be dangerous after all, Diana addressed him. I'll feel better around you than scared at my place. Diana was grateful to her friend for helping her. He sensed something amiss. Before, the stalker only knew her number, had pestered her with calls, and now he was the one who could be guarding her from the car across the street. Who knows who he is and why he wants it, if he wants to hurt the country? She wasn't going to make it easy for him. I could just stealthily walk up to that car and ask who he is and why he's sticking around, Archie suggested once. No, don't. And if he's dangerous, we should wait. Wait for what? Diane, we don't know who it is. We can call the police and tell them the car seems suspicious. And you're worried about the safety of your children? And what good would that do? It would scare him off for a while. And then he'll come back. It's better to leave him alone and let him prove himself. I don't know what he wants. If he's what we think he is, he'll do something soon. That's when we'll call the police, so we can't get away with it. Archie didn't argue. It was Diana's family, after all. And he had to accept her choice. Archie stayed by her side to come to her aid at a moment's notice. Soulful summer nights, when the window to the street was open, a male silhouette in a black mask on his face entered the house through it. All the members of Diana's family were sleeping peacefully, unaware of the threat hanging over them. The man moved unobtrusively and quietly, constantly looking around to avoid hitting anything in the dark. He did not risk using a flashlight, assuming that Diana, like a mother, has a sensitive sleep and is ready to react to anything and get up to her children. The stranger successfully traversed the hall, where Diana and Archie slept, and made his way to the bedroom. But there he was in for a surprise. As soon as the stranger carefully opened the door, he heard a menacing growl, followed by a bark. The dog rose on his paws and jumped at him. Archie shouted, "Diane! Someone's in the nursery." A friendly cry of children was heard. Archie rushed over to them and caught an unfamiliar man pounding the dog's head to rip his pant leg out of his bed to avoid unrecognizability. "Won't you go away?" uttered Archie over the older man's head to himself, and tried to twist him, but the rascal was not so simple. He proved to be tough and strong. At first the men struggled, rolling around on the floor and hitting each other. Diane was screaming frantically, unable to make her way to the frightened children. "Call the police! Call the police! Call the police!" Archie repeated. Climbing on top of the stranger, Diana seemed to thaw out in terror and rushed to the cell phone. What was lying in the hall on the nightstand? "A car is on its way to you. Wait for it. Try to stay calm." The dispatcher's confused voice kept repeating. "Can you hear me? Calm down. And try to move the children to safety." Diane would not have been happy to shield her children, but she couldn't carry them past the fighting angry men. Diane, look. Archie waved the mask he'd ripped off the outlaw in front of her. You know him? Who are you? What do you want? She shouted hysterically, and at that moment in front of her, the perpetrator pulled out a knife and plunged it into Archie's left side. He was rocked. He didn't realize what had happened and didn't feel the pain yet. It was only the breathing that caught his breath. The rascal threw Archie off him like a sack and rose to his feet to the screams of Diana, and Evan struggled his way into the room, overwhelmed by the general crying and shouting. He didn't know what had happened, but he felt useless. Sickness had taken a lot out of him. The man did not want to stay away. The perpetrator spoke. She looked at the bloody knife in his hand and froze, allowing him to retreat. But a hard blow to the head knocked him to the ground. Dad, seeing the stone jewelry box in her father's hand left over from her mother. Daughter needed an ambulance. It was then that Diane realized Archie was hurt. She's a little girl. Exactly until the doctors arrived and loaded him onto a stretcher. Then she was completely knocked out. She couldn't talk normally to the police officers, who immediately upon arrival handcuffed the perpetrator and put him in the car. Then she tried to calm her children down. Before she gave her attention to anyone else, she worried that Archie might have been seriously hurt, that he had lost a lot of blood. She had to leave her father and drive to the station to write a statement. That and reported that they had figured out the identity of the man who had attacked them. It turned out to be Mickey Stone. What Stone? But why? Diana wondered. He and Alexander Stone are related. Half-brothers, the police officer confirmed. And why did he sneak into my house? Did he want to steal the children for his brother so he wouldn't have to pay me the rest of the money? And I don't get it. Wait, Diane. What amount? What is your relationship to this family? When Diana told her story, a lot of things became clear. At the same time, he wasn't intimidated by possible charges. Where's my lawyer? I don't want to hang around here answering any more of your stupid questions. That's your right, nodded Dexter. Your public defender has already received the case and is on his way. What do you mean? Mickey stared at the cop. Dustin, our family's lawyer, and I need his protection. Dustin only represented your father and your brother, so you have a public defender. After these words, Mickey's insolence diminished. His posture immediately became unsure, and his fingers clenched into fists. His father had set him up again. Even from the other side of the world, he's taunting him. If a mere lawyer defends him, the truth will quickly come out. Before your lawyer takes the case, Dexter interrupted his thoughts. I advise you to think about a fair confession of your cooperation in court. Mickey was left alone, watching his emotions through the mirror. From the other room, he was desperate, torn with conflicting thoughts, not knowing how best to save his own skin. Meanwhile, Diana learned of the deaths of Alice and Alexander. She clutched at her heart, pressing her back against the corridor wall. How could it be? When did they die? Why didn't I know anything? She whispered softly. It has been 8 months. I am so sorry. I know you were on good terms with the family, but my God, I thought they had betrayed me, abandoned me. Unscrupulous people. I scolded them. I was angry, and I didn't even realize what a nightmare it was. How? How did they die? They crashed their car. There was an accident on the highway. The circumstances are suspicious. No witnesses, no cameras, no driver of the vehicle that hit their car. That's when we turned our attention to Mickey, but there was no hard evidence. He was the only one who could only benefit from his wife's brother's death. After their tragic deaths, Mickey became the sole heir to his stepfather's entire fortune. The late Kevin never had any pity for his stepson. As far as we know, and now the direct heirs of the entire fortune are Alexander's children. So your children, they are the ones who stood in the way of Mickey's fortune. Was he going to dream them up? Diane shared with Dexter the story of the threatening phone call. Forensics quickly found out that the phone from which those very messages were coming in belonged to Mickey's mistresses were coming in belonged to. As soon as Diane was released from the police, she immediately went to the hospital to visit Archie. By the time she arrived in front of the post, he was being transferred to the IQ. He couldn't be seen yet. The surgeon stopped her. "Be patient until morning. Your hero will live." He wasn't seriously injured. He miraculously missed his organs. He's lucky. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you very much." A powerless Diana didn't come home until morning and kissed all the peacefully sleeping babies. For several days she was in turmoil. In an instant her life changed. She almost lost Archie and her babies. And she also learned that Alice and Alexander's friends had died. When Archie came to, they immediately rushed to him to tell him everything. As soon as she crossed the threshold of the room, she rushed to the man, falling to her knees in front of the bed. "God, it's so good that you're alive. You should have known how scared I was. I don't want to go through that again. Don't ever get in the way again. Don't you hear me? Never again." Diana cried, holding Archie close to her. "I'll do anything to keep you out of harm's way." Archie kissed her tenderly, without warning or long speech. "I care for you so much. You are my family. How can I stand by and watch when someone wants to hurt you?" She could not spread her arms around the neck of someone who had become so dear to her. She could boldly declare that she loved him because she had long held that feeling within her and knew that Archie was not a man who sought gain or feared hardship, and yet she feared that he wouldn't want to take on the burden of his woman's 3 children. Now Diana realized that she hadn't made any mistake about Archie. He didn't need her alone. He was also attached to them, also loved them, and was willing to give them fatherly love. And Evan had noticed long ago that something was brewing between them. But he didn't embarrass the young people. He thought it was fate itself that brought them together, because they were perfect for each other. A few days later, Diane was contacted by Dustin. He asked to meet her and came to her house in person. "You said it was very important. Please come in." Diane escorted the lawyer into the kitchen. "I have come to you to announce Alexander's last will and testament. You've had to endure a lot, but I couldn't before a lot, but I couldn't before. Alexander asked that I read his will at the right hour, right after Mickey was arrested. The thing is, Diane, Alexander's will leaves his entire estate to the mother of his children. The children are direct heirs, but until they come of age, you have every right to dispose of all the property." I felt weak in my legs and immediately sat down on the table. "What are you trying to say? I understand the words, but I can't believe it." "Yes, it's not easy. It's unusual for you to imagine yourself as such a wealthy man, but everything will come with experience. I've provided legal services to the Stone family for years. I can provide one for you." That's Alexander's direct recommendation. He long suspected Mickey was up to something. That's why he drafted such an unusual will. He spoke very flatteringly of you, almost calling you his little sister. And Alice spoke very warmly of you, too. The paragraphs of the will were not just a sign of gratitude. They are sincerely attached to you. You can inherit at any time, and Mickey has nothing to do with his stepfather's finances. It's all yours now. Had a long talk with Dustin to get the ins and outs of her situation. She understood that they would never have financial difficulties again. Most importantly, she would be able to get her father back on his feet. In order to become the rightful owner of the estate of the late Alexander, Diana in the United States issued all the necessary tests and confirmed the legal right to inheritance. But Diana's joy did not last forever. Archie came to her with serious talk. "I must go," he declared, without preamble. "You're an incredibly rich woman now. With kids, there's plenty of opportunity. Any decent man would agree to be with you. And it's not because you're an enviable bride. No, you're smart and kind and beautiful. I was even glad you stayed home with the kids. And men don't see how good you are. And they don't try to be your boyfriends. You have a different life now, and I don't belong in it." Diana stood frowning, totally unwilling to accept all the nonsense Archie was trying to drum into her as truth. After listening to him with a serious look, she suddenly laughed at the bay. "What are you doing?" wondered Archie. "I've got it all figured out, you noble one of mine. You wanted so much to get away from me beautifully. but I won't let you go. But I won't let you go. Diana was quickly at her side and kissed her lover. Don't you dare think you're not good enough for me. We're made of the same stuff, and we'll deal with the riches that have fallen on our heads together. Just let me deal with Daddy's illness and get through the trial. I'll support you, and don't think you'll have to deal with everything alone. Archie smiled and surrounded his beloved in an embrace. Thanks to the money in the family, Diana was able to hire a great babysitter for the children. She took care of them while their mother went to the clinic with Evan. Expensive. Treatments were now available and on time. My daughter is feeling much better, Evan boasted. On my own, walking around the floor in the swanky new house where Alice and Alexander used to live. Soon I'll be able to run on that lawn. With a contented look, he imagined, pointing to the exact green grass outside the window. Sure, get your strength up through the field. Soon the grandchildren will grow up. You'll be running around the yard with them. Otherwise, they're going to torture us all. Sometimes she couldn't believe her luck. Her life had changed so much, and so had she herself. She used to see in her reflection as a young turned girl with unruly hair and a limited list of needs. Now, in the reflection, Diana smiled at a well-groomed young woman with a stylish haircut, even skin tone, and perfect teeth. Her children were fed, content, and she no longer had to worry about how much money to feed them all. Confident in herself and in the future, she felt she was capable of so much. Archie didn't rush her into anything, didn't claim anything, and was just there for her. Having become a reliable support in difficult moments of life, together with him, Diana experienced everything. Court hearing the case of the death of Alice and Alexander, as well as the attempted murder of her and Archie. Mickey received a well-deserved sentence of 25 years. He no longer had powerful kin and an unlimited supply of money to take every opportunity to get out. On another night, after putting the kids to bed, Diana called softly to Archie and kissed him on the cheek. Come with me for a minute. Something's wrong. Is John crying again? No. Everybody's asleep. Don't worry about it. Let's just go. Archie took Diana's hand and led her downstairs to the irritated glass doors that overlook the garden. When they found themselves under the night sky and walked deep into the garden, which beckoned with its yellow garb, she suddenly noticed an arch of flowers and a bunch of colorful ribbons tied to thin tree branches. There was a table beneath the brand, and on it were candles burning and 2 glasses filled with champagne. What is this? Asked Diana excitedly, frozen in place with delight. She put her palms to her face, looking at Archie. He immediately pulled a small box out of his pants at home. Inside it was a smooth ring. Diana, my love, will you marry me? Excited, Archie didn't even have time to take a breath. She answered, yes, of course. Archie's beloved put the ring on her finger and hugged her, pulling her off the ground. In that instant, they both shuddered with a whistle and a bang, salutes flying over their heads. Wow, Diana was surprised. Congratulations, daughter. Evan appeared out of nowhere and held his daughter tightly to him. Be happy, my girl. I am very happy for you. Thank you. Diane was upset to the point of tears. Congratulations, my son. Evan hugged Archie. So we all organized it together. We had a helper. When the last salvo was over, Dustin appeared from behind the trees. Congratulations to the bride and groom. Diane and Archie's wedding had barely 30 people. They invited only those closest to them, but the organization was top-notch. Tony had long ago abandoned the dream of her perfect wedding. She knew she didn't have the means to do everything to the highest standard. Having 3 children at all called into question the reasonableness of a lavish ceremony. It made more sense to spend the money on something useful, but now she could afford the celebration of her dreams. The newlyweds received sincere congratulations from their loved ones, useful gifts, and a lot of emotion. Photographers, videographers made sure that every moment of the happy celebration was a memory. Tony and Archie decided to go to business school together because they wanted to figure out what they were going to face. On Dustin's advice, they sold Alexander's company quite profitably and decided to start their own business, in which they understood and wanted to grow. Toni was very fond of baking, so she collected and developed recipes for a small pastry shop with her own hands. And Archie studied the art of brewing coffee. He was always attracted by the diverse taste and aroma of the magical drink in its various variations. Having taken up their own business, they were not always successful, but they never stopped believing in each other and asking for advice. They attracted experienced masters and adopted their knowledge. They spared no expense to improve and provide excellent service. Their cozy pastry shop of seating was written about in the local newspaper and on social media. Bloggers celebrated their establishment in their publications, attracting more and more guests. And Evan, while staying home, wasn't bored. At his age, he could no longer chase his grandchildren, who were curious to try everything they could get their hands on. 2 nannies and faithful 4-legged friends watched over them in this restless age, and in the evenings handed the little ones over to their tired parents. How pleasant to be at home when you don't pick up 2-year-old Maria in your arms. You're my little sunshine. I missed my mom. Despite their busy schedules, the couple never neglected their parental responsibilities. They were happy to let go on weekends and take care of the children themselves. They never knew the lack of parental love or attention. They were never bored because they had each other, and their parents could afford to give them whatever toys and entertainment they wanted. But Archie didn't think they should get used to phones and tablets at an early age. Let them learn the world the old-fashioned way, he said. Let them run around, climb trees, splash in the water, chew sand. Not those creepy, modern cartoons. He sounded just like my dad. So Diana teased him and kissed him on the temple. And I have a surprise for you, she showed. A positive pregnancy test. If you like the story, please support me with a thumbs up button. It's only 1 click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you in advance. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.